The other day, I found a Reddit post about a guy who accidentally watched the entire movie Dungeons and Dragons with audio description for the blind turned on. It piqued my curiosity, and I couldn't resist exploring this unique way of experiencing the movie. So I bought the DVD and gave it a shot, and I believe it's the best way to watch the film. Now I do want to say on top of this, I discovered this before Spezzy Boy screwed over the Reddit community. I'm not currently using the site, and I won't be until he sorts it out. I've got a whole video up about the drama if you're interested. But back to Dungeons and Dragons. Let me quickly describe what the audio narration is, because some of you may have never used it before. It's a narration technique primarily designed for blind or visually impaired people. It provides detailed descriptions of key visual elements, such as characters' expressions, movements, and body language, throughout the film. Usually, it's available through audio description headsets in cinemas. It helps create a more inclusive movie watching experience. Now let's take a look at the original Reddit post. The Redditor shared their story of mistakenly activating the audio description while trying to enable subtitles for the movie. Unaware of this error, they assumed the film was intentionally narrated, akin to a dungeon master guiding players through a role-playing game. Although it seemed like an interesting creative choice, the Redditor kept watching, and he watched the whole film this way. To their surprise, they found themselves falling in love with the narration. They appreciated the unique element it added to the visuals, and how effectively it utilised dialogue breaks during action-packed scenes. Even their partner, who was busy playing the Switch, remarked that the movie would be enjoyable for blind people. They then said, and I'm going to read this bit out, "At the end of the movie, I kept waiting for there to be something cute in the credits about the voice actor for the Dungeon Master narrator, but there wasn't. After the credits, I got on IMDb to read the trivia, expecting there to be something about the filmmaker's unconventional choice to have an omnipresent Dungeon Master narrator relay what was happening on screen. There was no trivia mentioning the narrator. I went back and realised what I'd done. I turned off descriptive track and watched a bit. I was really disappointed. It's still a good movie, but the narration made it so much better." Now, I was really confused as to how you could have made this mistake, because whenever I accidentally put on the audio description narration, it's usually a really monotone voice and pretty boring. But then something stood out to me. The voice of the narrator was Sue Perkins. No wonder it was enjoyable. It's worth noting, if you want to watch it the same way that I did and this Redditor did, then make sure that you buy it on YouTube or have the UK version of the DVD. Subtitles and audio tracks are typically produced by local distributors, and international copyright laws often create issues with having subtitle packages, so it's never the same. I discovered that the American DVD featured an American woman narrating in a monotone voice, which I can only imagine would be very dull. But thankfully, with the UK version, Sue Perkins delivered one of the best performances in the entire movie, even though she wasn't even initially meant to be part of it. So yeah, I watched the film with the audio description narration on, and I wanted to talk about the parts that stood out to me, and hopefully convince you to watch it in this way. I mean, we'd better get used to watching films like this anyway. If filmmakers continue their trend of making movies darker and darker, then soon we'll all need described audio anyway. Now, this movie is great on its own, for both the general public, and it's also a love letter to the D&D community. There are plot points based on old games, and there's even a nod to the cartoon series from the 80s. And the only reason why I think it didn't perform well at the box office is because D&D groups decided to go together. And anyone who's played D&D knows how difficult it is to get the entire group to agree on a day to do something. There's always at least one person busy. So the movie begins with Sue Perkins describing these silver stars skating across the dark ice on a mountain lake. They soar through a solitary snow-capped mountain and form a ring around it. Text floats into the ring. Paramount. She somehow made the studio's opening title card sound beautiful, so immediately I knew this was going to be good. On Twitter, Sue Perkins said that there was a very, very finely tuned script, but I was given an opportunity to pop in an occasional ad-lib, and that might explain why it has so much charm. It's not simply her brilliant narrating voice. She's put a bit of her own humour into it as well. Now, a good YouTuber would have watched this version and the American version and compared it, which I was going to do, but then I realised I'd have to pay import tax and also get an American DVD player, and that is not in the far too much to say budget. There's a bit where the gang are clinging onto Jonathan as he flies, and while it was entertaining in the original movie, it's a great scene, sure, but having Sue Perkins narrate how they almost fall off, and hearing her talk about how they all stumble across the snow, when otherwise it would have been complete silence, it's beautiful. It elevates the movie to a new level. The dialogue works around the narration so well. It's amazing. I never felt like it was interrupting them speaking. Hearing Sue describe this transition where we see the map, she says, Edgar and Holger run away through the blizzard. The view moves over a map. The land becomes greener as it progresses south. It's such a simple thing, but so many of these scenes are so much better with the narration. It genuinely does feel like I'm sat in a game of Dungeons and Dragons, with Sue as the dungeon master describing everything that's going on. If you're a fan of the game, then you have to watch it this way. Her narration makes everything seem really intense and high stakes. Have you ever had someone read a book to you? Like if your partner reads you a few chapters from a book, you find yourself hooked in a way that you wouldn't be in if you were just reading it for yourself. I think it's a sense of community thing, that you're enjoying a story together, because that's what storytelling used to be, a group experience. People didn't write stuff for people to read in private back then. Homer wrote his epics to be enjoyed by crowds, to be told. They were oral stories. There's also a website for them. It's drawing on that thing that we have lost, appealing to that innate sense of community that we all crave. I think that's what makes this narration wonderful. It turns the movie into more than just a solo experience. There's also something brilliant about the way that the audio description is ever so slightly quicker than the action, only by like half a second. But when Edgar and Holger are fighting the knights, Sue Perkins says Holger smashes two of the soldiers' heads together, and then immediately after she does it, we hear the sound effect. That ding. There's something really satisfying about it, and it works in the lore because it's the dungeon master saying what's happening, and then we have the added extra of seeing what's happening because it's a movie. This delay works really well when we meet Bradley Cooper's character, who is a halfling. Holger knocks on the door, and while the door is still closed, Sue Perkins says, a white halfling man with a goatee and dark hair opens the door. And then the door opens, and instead of my initial reaction being, oh, the perspective there is a bit weird, are they trying to do the thing they did on The Hobbit, or is it just a weird shot? But no, we are immediately told there is a halfling, so we understand what's happening, and what we're seeing a bit better. And the tense scene when the gang are running away from the dragon, Thembashard, it's made all the more intense with Sue Perkins' narration. She says, he breathes a vapour at them, which ignites as it contacts a fallen column of magma. Now, that is so much better than what actually happens. What we see is him just breathing some fire that obviously misses because, well, all villains have to have the aim of a stormtrooper. But knowing that the vapour ignited because it came into contact with lava makes the scene all the more epic. That's what this narration does. It adds a new layer onto the movie, making it more enjoyable. It reminds me of when I was a kid and they'd bring out novelizations of every big film that came out. They don't really do that anymore. These novelizations allowed you to learn more about the characters that you didn't know before. I used to love Quantum Leap. And in the pilot episode, there's a scene where Al and Sam are talking, and Al points at a baseball player and says, wait, doesn't that kind of look like... And Sam replies, yeah, you're right. The name of the baseball player is never said in the episode, but it's written in the novelization. Now, I'm not very knowledgeable about baseball, but knowing the name allowed me to Google the baseball player and learn more about him. It added to my understanding of that scene. That's what this narration does. It fills in the gaps left by the lack of novel adaptations of films these days. By providing synchronized and well-crafted audio description, Dungeons & Dragons transcends its visual medium and is transformed into an all-encompassing sensory experience. I love how we have the ability to watch this film with her narration, because she truly does make the film even better. This accidental discovery by a Redditor who, in fairness, should have clocked on that something was going wrong. Especially when she narrated the opening title card, but that accident has led me to love this film even more. That's how wonderful Sue Perkins' narration is. What made the audio description experience of D&D even more special was the inherent connection to the game itself. As a film based on the iconic role-playing game, the audio description highlighted and celebrated the game's elements throughout the movie. It's everything you love about the game in movie format. Sue Perkins is our dungeon master. So yeah, this is the ultimate way to watch Dungeons & Dragons. I really recommend you buying it on YouTube, which I now learn has a narration. I could have saved a fortune instead of buying the Blu-ray, but ah well, you live and you learn. Right, that's all for today. Make sure to subscribe. If you do, I'll invite my mate around and force him to watch Shrek the way the filmmakers intended. In black and white, in French, with English subtitles, and we'll do a video on it. We're also trying to make it to 3K, so help us out if you can. Right, I'll let you go. Bye.